Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about those big time games happening in College Station as well as Clemson, South Carolina, Texas A&M, South Carolina, Clemson, two huge games. I have Texas and South Carolina winning those two, and we'll see how the effect of that for South Carolina for the CFP is, but definitely going to be a really, really fun one in those two places. But let's get to some upset alerts. A couple of games that are going to be really interesting, and the last one not quite as much of an upset alert as it's just a really big game in the Big 12, but definitely want to break these down for you guys, and we'll start with that Notre Dame-USC game. Going to be a huge one over there in LA, and it's the last game that stands between Notre Dame and a home CFP game. Going to be a huge one, and they're still kind of digging themselves out of the NIU hold, and I think it puts them in a position where if they were to lose this game, I don't think they would be in. I think they'd be left out for a 3-loss Alabama, or for a 3-loss Ole Miss, or for a 2-loss Clemson. I think they would be out of the field. So they definitely do have to execute at a very high level. USC, obviously, trying to ruin the season of their rival. For Notre Dame, the defense is a nightmare to deal with. No doubt about that. The thing is, one area where maybe you can get after him just a little bit is Jade Maiava is very good at creating plays on his own. He's very good at kind of going off schedule, making the plays that not a lot of other people can make. So maybe that's just it. Maybe it's just him running around making those crazy plays on third down like Caleb Williams has been able to do against a number of teams in that USC jersey. Not so much Notre Dame, to be totally fair, but it's going to be interesting to watch that unfold, and definitely a player that he's a playmaker, and that playmaking could be an issue for a defense that has been just so good the entirety of the year. The other question is, the Notre Dame run game, will that be too much for USC? USC is 38th in the country at stopping the run. Notre Dame does have the 11th best rushing attack, so it'll be interesting to see who wins out in that category. You slow down that Notre Dame running attack, I think this game could get really interesting in a hurry. If USC can slow them down when running the ball, I think those USC playmakers become a huge part of the game, and maybe just a couple of big-time plays will totally change this one. But some keys to the game. USC's toughness just in general. It has been tested every single week in the Big Ten throughout this year. They've met some tests. They have failed some others. So we'll see what happens in this one. This is going to be a very tall order. No doubt about that. But the interior defensive linemen, the O-linemen, the outside players at corner and at wide receiver, they're going to have their hands full. They're going to get roughed up a good bit in this game. And USC is just going to have the mental and physical toughness to get through this game and battle to a possible win. And then Notre Dame's pressure. They are very close to that CFP. They are very close to hosting their game. They're very close to being in a very good position as they head into that tournament. This is going to be a very tough one to get through. There's no doubt about this. This 4 quarters is going to feel like 8. It's going to be a very long game for Notre Dame, and they're going to have to find a way through it, have to find a way to get a win, and then they're on their way to the CFP, and they get to sit around while everyone else plays conference championships next week. And then Jade Maiava creating after off schedule. It's going to be fascinating in this game. You know, this D-line, it's going to get after you. The USC offensive line is not necessarily as elite as you would like it to be with how good this defensive and front seven really is for Notre Dame. So maybe it is just Jade Maiava running around, making a couple of plays here and there, making a play downfield, and the game totally changes. It's going to be huge, and if he's not creating on the outside, then it might be a long day for this USC offense, and I tend to think he's going to have a hard time doing that. Notre Dame's defense, I think, is just going to be too much here. I don't think USC is going to be able to run the ball very effectively, and then Xavier Watts is going to be waiting on the back end to make a big-time play. I think Notre Dame gets the win, sets themselves up for a host position in the CFP, and we'll see what happens from there. Obviously, a lot of people still think they're not quite for real. We'll find out in pretty short order. Maybe they'll lose this weekend and totally fall out of the field. Then you do have Miami-Syracuse, a really interesting game. Miami has their final test before they get into the CFP. I believe even if they lose in the ACC championship, they're probably in pretty good position. We saw where SMU was today, probably where they will be if they would lose in the ACC championship. If they lose in this game, I think it puts them in a weird position where maybe they get that at-large bid if Clemson goes on to win the ACC or something like that. Maybe they get left out for an Alabama or for an Ole Miss. So I wouldn't necessarily tempt fate there. I would try to win this game if I was Miami, get to the ACC championship, and then hopefully get that bye in that first round. But Syracuse likely has enough to go punch for punch with Miami. They have a very, very potent offense. They really get after you. The Miami secondary, relatively good in pass yards per game, only 35th in the country, but they absolutely can get beat deep. So Zeed Haynes, Aronde Gadsden, they're going to be huge in this game, and that Syracuse offense has been a little bit hit or miss at times. Wasn't necessarily fantastic against UConn last week, has been just absolutely lights out. In that Georgia Tech game they played earlier this year, they were absolutely incredible. So maybe they still have one of those in their belt. Maybe they can pull out a big-time performance from that past game from Kyle McCord and get a big-time win here. But more than anything else, Miami's season is on the line, and I think Miami in general this entire season, when they have gone on the road against another passing attack or against another offense in general that can meet you halfway, they've struggled, no doubt about it. You know, that Virginia Tech game, they were able to escape. That Cal game, they were able to escape. There are a lot of very, very close calls. Syracuse is a team that can run the ball with LaQuint Allen, but also can make those plays over the middle of the field, and they have a relatively good back end. So you're going to have to be very careful if you're Miami in this game, because there's a world where they match up a whole lot better than you have for Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech didn't match up quite as well against Miami as Syracuse does, so maybe that's the opening that Syracuse needs in this game. But some keys to the game, Miami's back end is going to be huge. One way or the other, Kyle McCord is going to attack you. And I think when you look at this Miami team, they've been good against the pass as the season has gone on, but they have given up 300 yards to different teams like Louisville and different teams that absolutely are going to pass the ball a little bit more aggressively. Syracuse finds themselves in that group. So it's going to be interesting to watch how much LaQuint Allen's involved, how much they attack that back end, how well the back end plays. Meach Powell and all those guys are going to be huge in this game. And then who can start fast? This is going to be a huge game, and I think Miami, they've fallen into holes over and over again this year. Even last week, they fell into a hole against Wake Forest. So you want to avoid that if you can, because the Syracuse offense, this explosive and this dangerous, can absolutely turn a 7-point lead into 21 in a hurry. And then you're in a position where you got to come back from 21 down again in the fourth quarter. Probably not going to be as readily able to do that with LaQuint Allen on the other side that can definitely run some clock off definitely run some clock and kind of bury this win for Syracuse. So going to be interesting to watch that one. Whoever starts faster in this game, definitely in a position to win it, because I think Miami's at that point where maybe if they start slow again, that doubt starts to creep in like it did in the Georgia Tech game. So going to be interesting to watch that. Guys like Fadil Diggs definitely want Syracuse to start fast, because then they can kind of pin their ears back and get after Cam Ward. And this is Cam Ward's moment. There's no doubt about that. He's played a Heisman-level season at quarterback. I don't think he should win the Heisman, but at the end of the day, he can put his final stamp on his trip to NYC in this one and send his team to Charlotte. This is why they brought him to Miami. This is why he was one of the most coveted quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and that's why he's going to be the guy that they want to lead him the rest of the way. He's got to win on Saturday to do it. So going to be a huge one, and I think they go back and forth in this game. I think it's going to be an absolute fight. I think Miami has enough in the tank. I think it's going to be a really, really fun game, and I think there's going to be a second there where we're thinking about, is Miami left out? Is Clemson going to get in as a 3-loss team? There's going to be a lot of things that are going to get thrown out around this time on Saturday. But I think Miami ends up pulling it out, as they have pretty much this entire year, and they send themselves to the ACC Championship. And then finally, we do have Kansas State, Iowa State going to be a huge game over there in Ames, Iowa. And the Big 12 has very interesting implications around this game. Iowa State is likely in the Big 12 championship if they win. Now, there is a scenario where if BYU were to lose this weekend and then everyone else at the top 4 were to win, I think it would be Colorado that would go over Iowa State. So something to watch there. Definitely something that could totally shake this thing up. But as of right now, it would be Iowa State in the Big 12 championship after this one. Kansas State, their pass defense has been very, very bad. They've given up almost 250 yards per game through the air, and the duo coming in of Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel are going to be a load for them to deal with. They're going to have to find a way to keep them in front of them, make sure they get them on the ground, because they can absolutely make you hurt, and they can go for 200 yards each. They're absolutely ridiculous athletes, and both of them are nearing 1,000 yards on the season. So really remarkable players, and if Kansas State's pass defense cannot play a little bit better, then it's going to be a long day for them. Now, the good news for them is the Iowa State run defense, not all that great either. So they're going to have to battle tooth and nail for that one. Maybe Kansas State can run the clock just a little bit and just take over this game on the ground, run some clock, control a time of possession, and then Iowa State just won't have the time to come back in this game. But some keys to the game, the Iowa State wide receivers against those Kansas State DBs. I mean, Jaden Higgins over 1,000 yards this year. Jalen Noel just very close to it, probably will pass it in this game. And Keenan Garbers and Jacob Parrish, they've played good football. They have not played great football, and they're going to have to play great football on Saturday because these two guys can make you pay in an absolute second. They are very, very good, probably one of the best duos in the Big 12 right after that Colorado duo, or you can pick any number of duos from that group, but those two are really, really dangerous, and I think they're going to be a load to deal with for this Kansas State back end. The KSU run game is going to be huge in this one. Iowa State sits about 100th in run defense in the country. DJ Giddens and Avery Johnson are licking their chops at that. There's no doubt about that. They're going to try to get after you, and we'll see if DJ Giddens can have one of those games where he essentially just takes over, a Cam Scadaboo type game where he is the entire offense for Kansas State, and they end up getting the win. And then seizing the opening, seizing the chance, because both these teams have an opening for the Big 12 title. Kansas State obviously needs a little bit more to happen, needs a little bit more of a chaotic weekend, but Iowa State's in a position where you win this one, you win against Arizona State, you're in the CFP. As crazy as that sounds with how weird this season has been, you would find your way back into the CFP. And Kansas State, I think you're probably in a tough spot to find your way into the CFP, if I'm being totally honest, but maybe if you win the Big Ten, you could jump Tulane and get into that mix. But I think it's going to be a really fun game, back and forth. I think this Kansas State run game is going to own the day. I think DJ Giddens is going to be a problem in this game. I think Avery Johnson's going to make at least enough plays. It won't be all that pretty, but I think he'll make just enough plays, and I think Kansas State gets that one done. I think Miami's going to barely win. I think Notre Dame will get out with a win, but it's going to be really interesting to watch these unfold. Definitely going to be games that will totally define and totally change the CFP race, and that Notre Dame game is one that Alabama's watching very closely, that Clemson's watching very closely, that a lot of people right on the outside are going to be watching very closely. But going to be awesome to watch those games unfold. Let's take our third break here. And when we come back, we got to talk about the rivalries of the weekend. We got clean old-fashioned hate going on in Athens, Georgia, the Iron Bowl, the game. I want to break them all down right after this, so stick with us.